Greetings, sports fans. This is Armor of Truth Live number 398, and as you can see, we have with us here James Roguski. Closer?
Yep. Oh,
Getting better? Okay. All right. I just want to get that right, And today we're talking about the World Health Organization and its tentacles. And I have a little quote here that I think is a good way to start us out. If tyranny and oppression come to this land, it will be in the guise of fighting a foreign enemy. James Madison's 1787. And one of the things that we think is really important about this whole issue and the work that you're doing is that, number one, before we become obsessed with that multilateral organization or that one or even whoever's in Washington, D.C., we really need to be taking care of our own business at home in our local governments, our communities. We believe it starts from the heart outward. It starts in the home and your community outward. So why don't you just fill us in on what you've been doing lately on this issue? We've seen you around quite a bit lately, making the rounds, and that's excellent to see that people are interested in paying attention to this. So fill us in.
Well, let me start by actually patting you on the back. We've had many conversations before. You've had me on a number of times, and you've obviously done your homework, but you really did nail it more than maybe even you realize with what you just said.
Great.
This does start in the heart individually. It starts with your community, and it is about what our own government is doing, following the guides, or the recommendations made by these international bodies. But you got to look in the mirror first and say, what is it that we're doing that we need to change? And so that may not ring true with a lot of people who want to blame the WHO for everything. Now, I'm no fan of the WHO, but there's been a deep misunderstanding of what the WHO was supposed to be, what it ultimately has become, and what is going on with these negotiations. So the punchline today is that in a little bit more than a week, we're recording this on Friday, July 11th. On Saturday, July 19th, that's the deadline, the accepted deadline for the vast majority of nations around the world to write a letter to have their leader, their head of state, their president, their prime minister, literally even the Pope, because the Vatican is one of the parties to the international health regulations, write a letter to the WHO saying, thank you for all these wonderful amendments to the international health regulations, but no thanks, not for our nation. Everybody else can do what everybody else wants to do, but we reject those amendments under Article 61. Now, this is an article that is easily gotten to if you just go to rejecttheamendments.com. Don't do a Google search for it. Google's not your friend. They won't find it for you. It's on my Substack. You can find it that way. But just go to rejecttheamendments.com. And, July 19th is the deadline. It's ticking away. And even Donald Trump and the United States have not yet actually sent the appropriate letter to the WHO, to my knowledge, to reject the amendments that the Biden administration pushed through more than a year ago. Now, I am of the belief that Donald Trump, if he was clearly aware and properly briefed, and somebody put the letter in front of him to sign, that he would happily sign it and tell the WHO, to stick it. Mm-hmm. And so this is an open letter to world leaders. It's another one of the articles. If you want to click on that, we can go spend a little time looking at that.
All right.
It's essentially saying what I just said. Hey, 196 world leaders, and I'll change that a little bit. Hold on just one moment. Go up just a bit.
Okay.
More. I'm just curious. You haven't taken the poll. There have been over 2,000 people who have taken the poll that's just below that. Okay. And so far, last time I checked, 100% of people around the world, it's not a scientific poll because these are my, subscribers and readers and so forth. They're like, yes, we want, yeah, it's still 100%. It's
Yeah,
pretty
that's
amazing.
good.
2,056 people, not one of them has broken ranks. I'm going to leave it there. That's good enough.
All right.
Anybody who's been paying attention says, no, we don't want these amendments. And so this is a very simple, straightforward letter. I've summarized 10 reasons. We can get into a little bit of the details. I encourage people to read what these changes were that were initially pushed, way back when, by the Minority Report published by the Republican Party in 2020. This all started, if you go all the way back, to Republicans wanting to use the WHO to break into China to investigate what was going on in the Wuhan laboratory. And the WHO doesn't have authority to do that to a sovereign nation. But the Republicans wanted them to, and they started the call to amend the international health regulations to give the WHO more authority. Back in 2022, when I started reporting on this, Republicans were like, Republican constituents, when they got letters back from their Republican congressmen, and the Republican congressmen were speaking out in support of Biden's attempt to strengthen the WHO, their head exploded. They're like, what is going on in this world? Well, we all know it's one big party. It pretends to have two wings.
Yeah.
Fast forward in 2024, the WHO and the World Health Assembly and all of the negotiators, they broke every single one of their own rules. They were supposed to, let's just have a conversation, right? You and I, so people don't get confused by all the text and everything. People can go to rejecttheamendments.com and you can read all the details for yourself. They were obligated under Article 55 of the regulations to give 4 months notice of whatever the proposed amendments were supposed to be. Well, we're lucky if they gave us 4 hours notice.
Right. Doing it all in secret, right?
They kept it secret until mid-April, where they presented a draft of sorts. And then just before the assembly in May, they published another draft. And then just hours before they did what they call a vote, even though there really probably wasn't a quorum and they didn't actually take a roll call and get yay or nay or any of that sort of thing, they snuck in a final version and they went through this procedure of, oh, nobody objects. Okay, boom, it's been adopted. I mean, it takes about 10 seconds. What they did in there, we'll talk about some of the top 10 things, but the most egregious just violation was they added in at the very last minute, it was invisible up until just a couple of hours before they were done, was something called Article 44 BIS. They wedged it in between 44 and 45. And it's all about the financing to build out the infrastructure for big pharma to manufacture more fake PCR tests and more devices like ventilators and drugs like remdesivir and the jabs with mRNA. They want to funnel billions of dollars through this new article in the regulations to build out that pharmaceutical hospital emergency industrial complex industry around the world. They want to take money from rich nations and build out the industry in poor nations, because what they learned is big pharma was not big enough. In the middle of some jungle somewhere or some very poor nation, they didn't have the manufacturing capacity to make the tests and the drugs and the devices and the gene altering, injections and so forth. They want to invest in the industry that I think is actually harming people's health. So they snuck that in, and even their own review committee, way back in February of 2023, when they were looking at the rough draft of the amendments, they said Article 21 in the WHO Constitution says very clearly the 5 categories that you can have regulations about. Yes, things to do with pandemics and emergencies and contagion, all that sort of thing. Yes, naming diseases. Yes, marketing and labeling, that sort of stuff. Diagnostic equipment standards and so forth. But they're not allowed under their own constitution to have money and financing be part of regulations. That has to be separate. Well, they didn't care. They snuck it in at the last minute. And so one of the main questions is, well, how much is this going to cost? And where's that money coming from? Now, with the United States, back when Trump came into office, literally on the first day, I believe, on January 20th, he signed an executive order that started the process to exit the WHO. But that's not the same as exiting the international health regulations.
Right.
People
Two
need
separate
to
issues, right?
separate those things, totally separate agreement. And said a lot of words in there, which were, basically good. And I was thankful that he did what he did. Then on February 4th, he had another executive order. And I believe this was before Marco Rubio was confirmed as the Secretary of State. And so the order went to the State Department to reevaluate all of the international agreements that the United States is involved in. And there's thousands of them, okay? The executive order gave the State Department 180 days to evaluate all the many different agreements. Well, 180 days from February 4th brings you into August sometime. That's a little too late for this deadline.
Yeah.
So what we need is for people who are watching this to do everything that you can. And if you go to my Substack, Brad, and pull up the interview that I did go to the main archive, click on my name there somewhere, and scroll down until you see interview with Wayne Peters right there. Open Rights World Ears. We'll give you a tiny little thing that you can do. Might not work on Friday afternoon, might not work on the weekends, but you can do it starting Monday. If you scroll down just a little bit, you realize in today's modern technology, the White House has a phone number. If you don't already know it, it's 202-456-1414. When you call, your phone may tell you that you've reached the National Security Council. I guess it's a good thing that the National Security Council is screening the calls, maybe.
Yeah.
Just let them know that you want to leave a brief, 30-second comment for the president. And there's a script of the comment, that you can leave. I want to encourage the president to send a letter to the World Health Organization to officially reject the 2024 amendments to the IHR before the deadline of Saturday, July 19th, 2025. All the information is available there. Thank you very much. Please let the president know that he better get his State Department to write a nice little letter that he can put his signature on and tell the world that, we're not agreeing to the amendments that the Biden administration basically pushed through when they were in office. That's something that everybody here can do. I've done it. Brad, you can do it. Everybody can do it. They're probably not there. It's, Friday afternoon. They may not be there over the weekend. If you dial 1111, meaning 202-456-1111, you may get a direct line to leave a comment over the weekend. I'm not 100% sure if that'll work right now. But Monday morning, let them know that you do not feel that we should just let what the Biden administration agreed to, just simply because of procrastination and, quite frankly, maybe negligence and the way I pronounce this word, ignorance, right? Just because you're ignoring this issue, the way it's structured, that doesn't make it go away. It requires a proactive rejection from the president saying, just because time is passing and this deadline is going to go through, it's kind of like when people get married and the minister says, speak now or forever hold your peace if you object to this matrimony. Well, speak now, Mr. President. Send a letter to the WHO and let them know that not for the United States. Now, this is absolutely possible. When Biden pushed through his first batch of amendments in 2022, it wasn't until December 1st that the deadline was to reject them. And we did manage to get 4 nations to reject the 2022 amendments. The Islamic Republic of Iran figured out how to do it. The Netherlands, New Zealand, and Slovakia also did so. And so they do not have this same deadline, because what Biden did was he shortened the time frame for there to be public discussion and awareness.
Right.
So they have an extra 8 months until March of next year. And I hope that they also will reject these amendments. But for most of the nations, including the United States, the deadline is Saturday. Now, a week ago today, on July 4th, when President Trump shoulda, woulda, coulda been doing this to celebrate our independence from this international organization, I have it on good account that the nation of Israel and their health minister did deliver a letter through their Geneva ambassador to the WHO, and they have told the WHO to take a hike, in the sense of they rejected the amendments to the international health regulations. To my knowledge, no other nation has done so. Congratulations to the people I know, the activists, Yonatan Segev and Heidi Moses and others there, who were like bulldogs and just nagged their members of parliament or the Knesset mercilessly until they understood why this was an important thing to do. People think it's not important. They think it's all been taken care of somehow, or I don't know what people think. But very clearly, it can be done.
Remember last year, I guess it was last June, wasn't it?
Mhm.
When everyone, you would have thought on the on Substack and YouTube and Rumble, you would have thought that it was all over.
Mhm.
The pandemic agreement fails, but, and I have a quote from James here, unfortunately, this is an enormous loss for we the people and a substantial victory for the evil forces that support the system of pharmakia. So explain why that's the case.
Well, there are multiple documents that have been part of this negotiations, and people from the beginning, and I think they set this up purposefully to confuse the daylights out of people. They started with amendments to an existing agreement that has its own set of rules and procedures and so forth. The amendments to the international health regulations. Parallel to that, they started negotiations on what a lot of people call the pandemic treaty. They ended up calling it the pandemic agreement. And last June, they let me make sure we get this crystal clear. Last June, not June 2025,
Right.
okay,
Yeah.
but June 2024, it was very clear that the pandemic agreement was not even close to being agreed upon. They were hoping to get them both at the same time. So it was a little tiny bit of a victory that the treaty was not ready for final agreement. But all they said was, oh, well, we're just going to keep negotiating. Okay. But in June of 2024, at the very last moment, late into the day on Saturday, June 1st, when everybody has done celebrating, the fact that the treaty wasn't going to happen, they adopted the amendments.
Yeah.
And I mean, I have
Sneaky.
a friend who traveled to Geneva. I think he's from Denmark. And he woke up in the hotel room the next morning. And I had published, late in the evening, an article. He woke up that morning and read it. And he was dumbfounded, because he was there and he was getting wrong information, celebrating a victory. And while everybody was doing that, they pulled it out at the last minute. It's like, it's not over till it's over. And it ended badly. Now, the amendments are misunderstood by many, many people. And so maybe if you go back and you find the 10 reasons, we'll talk about at least some of them.
All right, I got that.
And people can read this on their own. I don't want to go reading all text word for word, but first and foremost on the list is they defined which type of treatments the WHO can consider as relevant health products for any kind of a pandemic. Now, I have to admit, if they had included vitamins and minerals and herbs and homeopathic remedies and natural treatments and all that sort of stuff, I'd be like, okay, maybe this is not so bad. No, it's only pharmaceuticals. The only thing that the WHO is authorized by this piece of, this agreement are pharmaceutical devices like a ventilator, pharmaceutical, tests like the PCR fraud, drugs like remdesivir, and, obviously vaccines. But they also, if you scroll down to the top 10, if people go to rejecttheamendments.com, here's the top 10. It's too small for people to read, but this is what we're talking about. They also added gene and cell-based therapies. Well, I'm sorry, but violating God's design by injecting yourself with compounds that are designed to alter your genetic expression is something that I oppose with every fiber of my being. That is not the solution to the next pandemic. That's a violation of so many things. It's unbelievable. Okay. Number two, they also, the amendments would give the Director General additional authority. People may be aware that the Director General, Tedros Ghebreyesus, has the authority to declare what they call a public health emergency of international concern, PHEIC, literally a fake. Well, they want to make it scarier, so they added a whole nother category called a pandemic emergency. I call it the super fake. And essentially, it has really no meaning. There's either an emergency or there isn't. It's not like you have a super duper emergency or just a minor everyday emergency. But they created this category. And when you read the actual definition, it's a bunch of, gobbledygook, mumbo jumbo legalese. And it essentially says, if he wants to say there's a pandemic emergency, then there's a pandemic emergency because he said so. And, if you want to create a totalitarian state, you give the authority to some dictator, the dictator general, to declare an emergency. Now, people have gotten confused. That does not mean that if Tedros recommends a given drug or, lockdowns or mandates, it doesn't mean that he can order nations to do anything that he says. That's not what this is about. He declares the emergency, and what happens around the world is nations go, oh, well, the WHO, they know everything. So he said there's an emergency, so we're going to say there's an emergency. The Obama administration, on their last day in office, January 19th, 2017, day before Trump took office the first time, they changed the rules, and they published in the Federal Register the definition of what is required for our Secretary of Health and Human Services to declare a public health emergency in the United States. They don't need any data. They don't need any death count or hospitalizations or anything like that. All they need to say is, the Director General of the WHO said there's a public health emergency of international concern, so we're going to declare an emergency because we can. And that's the root of the problem, is now they all get to blame it on everybody else. Oh, well, he said, or he did it, or he did. Once our health secretary, or in any other nation, their health minister, whatever they may call it, invokes this declaration of emergency, whatever laws are on the book in your city, in your county, in your state, in your province, in your nation, that's where the tyranny happens. That's where you lose your rights and freedoms.
Right.
It's not dictated directly from the WHO. They're smart enough to not put that bullseye on their back. They're like, oh, we're just making a recommendation. Okay. But that recommendation is enough for your local officials to abuse you, right? Going back 5.5 years, they didn't need no stinking treaty, and they didn't need no amendments to the international health regulations to abuse our rights and freedoms. They did it all with the laws that were on the books at the time, and they haven't been made much better. And if anything, laws have been enacted that are even worse now. And so you have to look locally. Just, I think one of the things you said at the beginning, it starts in your heart. If you believe that it's okay to alter your genetic makeup because you're afraid of a pathogen that somebody said is halfway on the other side of the world, you're going to have to explain that choice to your maker, when it comes judgment day for you. I'm not going to judge you on that. I'll give you information. You can make your own decision. If you trust people who are telling you that, and you choose to be ignorant of other information, let me give you another website that you can pull up. I trust you've seen this one before. NotSafeAndNotEffective.com. I spent a month of research, and then I spent a month publishing a series of 20 some articles under NotSafeAndNotEffective.com. It took that long to round up the evidence that was available at the time to show all of the evidence that I could find that shows the harm that had been caused by the Pfizer and Moderna jabs. Well, yesterday, the United States FDA formally approved. There you go. If you go to notsafeandnoteffective.com, let me take a little tour down here. Just scroll down just a little bit. You'll see 3 flashing arrows. And right below those 3 flashing arrows, I'm trying to make it as obvious as I can.
Making it easy for I like this.
Is an open letter to President Donald Trump and an open letter to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Please, people, take the time to read those letters. I warn you, the open letter to President Donald Trump will churn your stomach. But if you scroll down some more, there's a table of contents, if you will, or a resource center. There's a couple of videos, and then there's the 20 some articles that I wrote.
Okay. Yeah, there they are.
Nobody can possibly remember all of this information, but the evidence of harm is unbelievable. Okay, there's 20 some articles that I wrote. You can pick a topic and dig in. I'll see you next year when you're done reading it all, because it's enormous. And so I encourage people that if someone, I just got sick and tired of hearing people say safe and effective, safe and effective, safe and effective.
Yes, I know. Yeah.
It's not safe and not effective. Okay, so go to notsafeandnoteffective.com and share that with anybody who has the willingness to learn. And one of the reasons why I did it is back before Thanksgiving last year, I did a search for something that I knew existed. And the search results I got, even from like DuckDuckGo or Brave or whatever, it was all FDA, CDC, NIH, New York Times, magazines, all that kind of thing. I was like, this is all the propaganda. So I realized that if I was looking for something that I knew existed and all of the search results were just government propaganda, then I would think other people would have that same problem for the most part. And I just tried to collect all the information that I possibly could, so it's all there in one place. Thousands upon thousands of peer-reviewed articles from PubMed that are available to everybody. But if you're ignorant, if you choose to ignore the evidence and you listen to the propaganda, oh yeah, safe and effective, safe and effective, safe and effective, until you look under the rug and you go, wait a minute, what does the word safe even mean? And what does the word effective even mean? And what does the word vaccine? There's a whole article on just how the meanings of words in law don't mean what you think they mean. Okay. And so one of the interesting ones that I came across was they say, oh, the side effects are rare, right? Well, in the law, rare means that they don't have a drug to treat it. Doesn't matter how many people have it. if a disease is not got a drug treatment, then it's considered to be rare. And you just go, wow, that's not what I think rare means. Okay. And so all of this can be overwhelming to people. I get it, right? I've tried to make it easy. You can go to rejecttheamendments.com or rejectthetreaty.com. And you know me, I always give my phone number. It's 310-619-3055. It's on every one of my articles. 310-619-3055. Call me, text me. If you're outside the US, use Signal or Telegram or WhatsApp. I get to meet people that are, pretty cool all around the world. Because quite frankly, if you're watching me say this right now, we're probably on the same page.
Right.
You get it. You may have a question, and maybe I'll be able to help you with it. Call the White House. Give them the message that you want President Trump to take action. If you live outside the United States, call your head of state's office. Whether it's the prime minister or what it may be. Israel, to my knowledge, has already rejected the amendments. President Trump has not. And at the moment, I'm hopeful that he will in the nick of time, but we need to let it, be clear that that's what we want him to do, and he needs to do it.
Okay. Once again, James has made it as easy as it could possibly be. All right. So now we have, let's recap our links. First of all, we've got notsafeandnoteffective.com, which will give us this cornucopia here of resources. That's excellent. I really appreciate that. And also the first one was rejecttheamendments.com.
Correct.
And we've got, make sure I show
that. That is the one that is the priority. The treaty is still on the table. It's currently being negotiated. They actually met yesterday and the day before, July 9th and 10th. Those negotiations are headed for next year. No nation can currently sign the treaty because they pulled a fast one and they made it seem like they were done. But they adopted a document that nobody could sign. So we'll be worrying about the pandemic agreement, pandemic treaty in months to come. But right now we're talking about the 2024 amendments to the IHR that were allowed to be adopted by the Biden administration. And we need the Trump administration to say, no, thanks. We reject them.
I remember last year you were saying also in the same sense, if you believe that the adoption of the amendments was somehow a victory, last June, I keep going back to that one because that one really stands out as a moment where we can see how easy it is for us to be pulled off, to take our eye off the ball.
Yep.
It's not, that wasn't a victory for health freedom at that moment. It's the international health regulations and then this thing that they call the pandemic agreement, two separate issues that need to be considered separately. And so right now we're focusing on, as you said here, reject the amendments. And we've got the top, these 10 reasons why to do it. It's all there for you. And this is really helpful too. We could just repeat these 10 reasons once a week for people. And hopefully that would be something that would, because as you said there, these, it's like they go into these areas of the world and they say, well, you don't realize you need what we have.
Mm-hmm.
But we've got this for you, and we're gonna cover you with it. We just sign here.
The wealthy nations who had the capacity, the manufacturing capacity and distribution networks and refrigeration units and all that sort of stuff, they didn't have any problem delivering the products to Americans and people in Canada and the UK and Australia and so forth. But they ran into problems in relatively poor nations. And so they learned that they need to take our money, funnel it through the WHO, and build out the manufacturing, distribution, and logistics networks in poorer nations because they, quite frankly, did a lot better. They stayed a lot healthier because they didn't use the ventilators and the remdesivir and the jabs. And, from their point of view, that was a failure. Now you think about that. People were healthier. They didn't die or suffer from COVID anywhere near the problems that people had in the developed Western world from the ventilators and remdesivir and the jabs. The health benefits in poor nations were dramatically better, but the profit margin wasn't there. And so they pushed through these amendments and definitions as the foundation to put it into the existing law. And they're still trying to, put the icing on the cake with the pandemic agreement off into the future. This would pull the foundation out from under what they're trying to do with the pandemic agreement. And unfortunately, they've done a very good job of, putting their pharmakia, hex over people, their spell with their language and their words. They've tricked people with language into believing, oh, don't worry about it, it's all fine. We still have a little bit more than a week to get our national leaders around the world to just write a letter and say no. We
Also,
shall see
don't
what
forget.
happens.
Go ahead.
No, I'm good.
Don't forget to, like we did, we set a bad example. Take the poll that James has for you there. Was that on reject the amendments?
That was on the open letter. And, it's
Right.
certainly not a scientific poll. I mean, the people who subscribe and read my Substack, they're obviously well informed, and they're there because we're talking about rejecting the amendments. I partly did it just to show you how you can skew the numbers, right?
Yeah.
But more to the point, there are clearly thousands of people who get it. Okay.
Yeah.
I think we're up to 2058, whatever it is.
2050.
And so the point is, if you, as an individual, the people watching us, listening to us right now, if you speak up and you realize that your government leaders do not listen to you, that they are listening to other voices, maybe it's their donors, maybe it's their lobbyists that have their ear, or maybe it's some evil entity whispering in their ear, whatever it may be. If you realize that they are not listening to you about this and they're just ramming it through, ignoring you, you realize that the solution has to ultimately come way back to you, and you have to look inside your heart and ask yourself, are you feeding the beast of pharmakia? Are you going to a medical doctor to get a prescription for a drug from a pharmaceutical company to hide symptoms of a problem that you're unwilling to change because you don't want to address the core issue that is causing it? Are you falling for the story that there might be some boogeyman pathogen out there somewhere across the world that has pandemic potential, and so you've got to inject something into your body that alters your genetic structure in a way that will make you sick on an ongoing basis, under the misguided belief that that is somehow going to save you? Do you think that is your savior, or are you going to put your faith someplace else? And so everybody makes their own decisions. Everybody's going to have to deal with their, I'm not going to judge, but when judgment comes to you, you're going to have to look. And I can forgive people for anything. I can forgive people who are unaware because nobody told them. But you've been informed. The information is there. The choice is now to be ignorant of that information and do nothing, or do whatever it is you can do and go to sleep, comfortable in yourself that you're trying to do the little bit that you can do with the information that you have to share it with other people. Let them make their own choices. But if you don't share it, if you don't tell them, then that's bad on you. If you tell them and they ignore you, they don't believe you, they want to follow somebody else, well, that's bad on them. So, do what you can do where you are with the information that you have. If I was to remain silent, I couldn't go to sleep at night. I couldn't live with myself. So thanks for the opportunity to share it with, your friends, your viewers, and so forth. That's all anybody can ask. Do what you can do.
Well, we certainly appreciate your hard work and allowing us to pick your brain on it. You've said many times to stop allowing yourselves to be deceived, and what you just described there came to mind. There's in the wisdom literature of the scripture says the fear of man is a snare. So if you're, this is really what it comes down to, the fear that they impose upon everyone through the media they own really does exactly what you were describing. It just creates this anxiety in people. They feel, well, I guess I need to do this. I must do this. And this is really because that's really the only form of information they're getting. So another piece of advice would be just to turn that stuff off. Stay out of that realm as much as you can. I mean, you've got plenty of people like James. There's a whole community of people out here that are working, for the most part. We've got a really good community. Summer, do you have anything you want to add to this?
Oh, I was just going to be in agreement with James about, we would call it, as Christians, we would call it being a watchman. So if you don't warn, what you see and you understand is a danger that's coming, and you don't warn, you've got that blood on your hands. So that would also be something to back up with what you've said. But, it's just, I was excited. How did you get that number to the White House? I was just curious.
Oh, that's just their phone number.
Just there. That's the National Security Council is actually the executive branch. That gets you into the president.
I think it actually gets you into the East Wing or whatever, not the West Wing. But regardless, whether you send them an email, I think I had the email address there too as well. Go on Twitter, go on Truth Social, go on X. Do whatever you can do. Shout at Marco Rubio, shout at Robert F. Kennedy Jr., put it on social media, take the graphics and let everybody know that this deadline's coming. The letter that they need to write is about a paragraph long.
Yeah.
Hey, WHO, no thanks.
Oh, I'll definitely be doing it for sure. But I was excited to see the phone number because I've not noticed it before. I mean, maybe you've had it up for a bit, but I was like, oh, well, that's super easy.
It's just right there too. You probably didn't have to dig too far to find it, right?
No, I mean, it's a very simple thing. It's right there. And I will say, when I called and left a message the other day, you call and the gentleman at the time answered the phone and, how can we help you? It's like, oh, I'd like to leave a comment for the president. They patched me through, it's basically a dispatch, right? Operator. And it said, oh, you're next in line. And it maybe took 10 seconds. And I had a real live human being that I spoke to. If it wasn't a real life human being, it was the best AI I ever, ran across. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. I said my piece. Now, okay, great. They get all kinds of information, I'm sure, from all kinds of people. But put yourself in that position. Even if it's a bot, just, making a spreadsheet. Okay, one person says this. But what if it's 10 or 100 or 1,000? Exactly. They're going to go, hey, Prez, something's going on here. What the heck is this?
There's a flurry. There's a flurry of stuff, these calls coming in.
Numbers matter. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right.
Awesome.
That's probably a great place to leave it so that more people will watch it, because we tend to go on for far too long.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. Call the White House, let them, give them a piece of your mind, keep it short and brief and respectful.
I will.
Just say, hey, President Trump, we want you to send a letter to the WHO and, reject the amendments that Biden put through back in 2024. Thank you very much. Give me a phone call if you have any questions, 310-619-3055. And bless everybody. Bless you guys. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
We'll give your phone number up there again too on our way out here. But yeah, thank you, James, very much for that. And we will talk to you very soon.
Okay. God bless you.
All right, brother.
Bye.